So what I thought I'd do today is just walk everyone through a quick demo of the Learning Machine issuing and verification ecosystem so that you can kind of get a feel for how it all works together, both from an issuer side and a recipient side of the experience. So we're just going to change over laptops here really quick. All right, great. So what you're looking at here is an example block cert. This is an example MIT diploma. For those of you who are in the plenary session earlier today, I mentioned that MIT was one of our first pilot institutions. They issued this summer to graduates of their Sloan School of Business and their media lab. So I'll turn back over to this in just a second, but the very first thing that I wanted us to take a look at is the BlockCerts wallet. And over here, I've pulled up the App Store, the iTunes App Store, but it's available for Android as well. So if you'd like, you can actually go to your App Store and download it right now. It's just called BlockCerts Wallet. And if you do download it, the very first thing you'll see when you open it up is this screen here, which shows your unique passphrase. The passphrase is something that nobody else knows. Learning Machine does not have a copy. The issuing institution does not have a copy. So it's entirely private, and that passphrase generates or can be used to regenerate the private key that the wallet generates when you download it. So this wallet, by the way, is completely open source. So this isn't even part of the product. This is something that's free and available to recipients anywhere in the world. So once you have written down your passphrase in a safe place, which is something we always recommend, you can begin adding issuers to the wallet. Now, it's actually a two-way opt-in process. So the way it works is that an issuing institution will send you an email inviting you to add them as an issuer to your wallet. So you can't just, look up Harvard and add Harvard and start, pulling down certificates from Harvard. You actually have to be invited by the institution. And if you accept the invitation, there's just a quick link that you press in the email. What that does is the wallet then sends the issuing institution your public key. So the private key that's in the wallet, nobody ever sees. It's basically, akin to, if anyone finds your private key, it's akin to leaving cash on the street. Like, they can just take all of your stuff. So we keep that completely private, and it's only the public key that's sent to issuing institutions. This may seem kind of, like not that big of a deal, but it's actually a huge deal from a usability standpoint. Because owning your own assets on the blockchain has traditionally involved that kind of key management that's led to a lot of user error and a lot of people losing valuable assets over time. So the wallet has radically simplified this to make adoption super easy from the recipient end. So once you've sent the institution your public key, they will appear in your wallet as an issuer, and then clicking on that issuer will take you to all of the certificates that they have sent you. So they can just start sending you certificates, and it can be anything. So it can be a diploma, it can be a micro-credential, it can be a digital badge, it can be a transcript, it can be an enrollment verification. Any type of official record can be sent to you directly. And you can use the wallet to view the official record as well. So you can see that here. You can use the wallet to verify the record, that it's authentic, that it was issued by the party that it's claiming to be issued by, and you can use the wallet as well to share it. So you can post it to a social media profile, you can email it, send it via text message, and that sharing operation generates analytics for the issuer, so they can actually see which of their certificates are being shared and with what frequency. So let me turn over to the issuing environment. So this is just a demo issuing environment that I use to demonstrate the issuing process. Over here you can see there's some analytics. We've had a little bit of activity here. You can adjust that based on the time frame that you want to see analytics for. And then down here at the bottom, you are seeing sharing analytics. And as your certificates are shared more frequently, these analytics will become more detailed. So you'll be able to see, which platforms they're being shared the most to. Are they being shared directly? So this kind of gives you a bird's eye view of issuing activity across your system. And as you can see, there are 3 tabs up here in the top left corner. One tab, the Recipients tab, is used to manage your lists. These are lists of recipients that you import into your issuing workspace. So I'm just going to click on one here. You can see the names of the recipients that you've invited, their email addresses, and their public keys as they begin to come in. And you can use this to kind of track critical mass of responses to your invitations. So, depending on your issuing schedule, you could say, once 60% of this list responds, I'm going to go ahead and issue the certificate. So to issue a certificate, it's really quite simple as well. I'm going to click on the Certificates tab. This list here includes the certificates that have been issued already, and then the Drafts tab contains ones that I'm working on that I have not yet issued. So I'm just going to click on this University of Malta degree. As I mentioned in the plenary session, we have a pilot coming up with Malta. We're going to be issuing across 3 different institutions there under the auspices of their Ministry of Education. So this example here just shows you, what a degree would look like. And then this metadata tab contains all of the machine-readable metadata that can be used to signify, high-level equivalency frameworks like the European Qualification Framework. So the certificate editor is, it's quite straightforward. If I want to edit the certificate, I can enter different element types. So whether it's text or variables, I can choose from a list. These variables can be customized based on the specific data that you want to include for particular batches of recipients. I can add images and signatures, watermarks if I want to. And whenever I'm ready, I just click Issue Certificate. So this screen here will allow me to verify that the cert looks good, that it has all the information that I want. I can select a recipient list here that I want to send the cert to, and then I can also choose an expiration date if I want. So, I can customize the exact time zone, and then this is just the email notification template. So then this is the last step. I enter my issuing password. I need to do this. This has been a built-in security feature because it's an irreversible operation once you write to the blockchain. So there's an issuing password that only the issuing organization knows. You check this box saying the action is final, and then click Issue. So I'm not actually going to issue here now, but that's really it. So it's quite straightforward. It generally takes about 10 to 40 minutes to write the certificate to the Bitcoin blockchain, which is the blockchain that the system currently uses. We are building in support for additional blockchains as well. So the Ethereum blockchain, there's a lot of enthusiasm for that. Private blockchains, most nation states are likely going to want their own custom national blockchain. So that's something we're also in discussions with. Ideally, there will be a capability soon to multi-write. So you'll be able to choose on that final issuing screen which blockchains you actually want to write the certificate to. That way you can have certain data that may only be verifiable to people with access to that country chain, for example, and then public data that can be verified by anyone on a public blockchain. So I'm just going to show you, that's what an issuing workspace looks like. What you're looking at here is a governance portal. And this is where the real power of the system becomes apparent. So if you're a large institution and you need to issue across many different organizations and gate administrative access with different criteria and different permissions, you can use the federated system to manage that entire process. You can subdivide your issuing institutions or organizations however you like. If you're a university, it could be your College of Medicine, your College of Arts and Sciences. They could each have separate issuing workspaces. If you're a government, it could be at the ministry level. And these spaces are modular as well, so you can continue creating child issuers as well. So that's a federated system. We've already taken a look at the test diploma earlier, but now I'll just show you how the verification operation works. So down here at the bottom, you can see some high-level metadata: the recipient, the issue date, the issuer. This transaction ID link will actually take you to a blockchain lookup service. So it'll take you to the block on which that transaction was issued, along with the transaction details itself. The public keys of the issuer and the recipient, the one-way content hash, and the date and time of the transaction. And then clicking this verify operation here will initiate the verification operation. This is a testnet certificate, so it hasn't actually been written to the blockchain, but it works. The verification works the same way. So it's checking to make sure that the certificate hasn't been tampered with in any way, that it has not been revoked, and that it has not expired. And you can use this friendly web view to share on a social media profile. You can send it to a potential employer. You can include it as a link in your resume or CV or on a personal website. This is kind of the friendly human-facing view. When you receive a certificate, you receive this view, this web link, which you can also import into the app, and you receive the initial or original JSON file, which is the actual digital document. That includes all of the content of the certificate in a structured file format, all of the metadata, and the blockchain receipt layer, which is used to verify the authenticity of the certificate. And so, this verify button is great for quick and easy verification, but conceivably you could have a sophisticated user who has created a spoof website that looks like it's verifying, but is not really doing so. So, for high-stakes verification situations, what you'll want to use is an independent verification service. And this is something Learning Machine builds for its clients. So this is the MIT verification portal. And you can use this to verify any block cert, actually. So I'm going to paste in this test certificate, and it's going to come up with the same metadata, and then I can verify its authenticity there. So I can use this service to determine that, in fact, the MIT degree that someone's presenting for employment was, in fact, issued by MIT. So that's kind of a quick run-through of the whole cycle. At this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions or discussion. Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering, you said you were storing the hash of the content on the Bitcoin blockchain, but where are you storing the actual content?
Right. So these human-readable certificates are currently being hosted by the issuing institutions using a custom domain. That is a temporary solution because obviously we want to remove any type of dependency on the issuing institution. So in the future, on a roadmap, we're actually going to be migrating hosting to the IPFS, the Interplanetary File System.
Right, thanks.
You mentioned that you might want to also port to Ethereum,
Mm-hmm.
and Ethereum has other functions to it. Are you looking to expand the capabilities of your program?
Yes, in fact, we see the BlockCert standard as forming the kind of underpinnings or infrastructure for a smart contract-based future.
Mm-hmm. And what would you, can you give an example of what you would use a smart contract for example?
Oh, sure. I mean, the applications are virtually endless, but
Mm-hmm.
to give some examples, you could have an HR intake system that pre-screens block certs on the basis of certain eligibility criteria and then initiates different types of responses, organizational responses, whether that's interview or hold, or you can actually do this with legacy ATSs as well. It depends, basically what other types of features you want to be associated with the contract process. So there are certain things you can do on-chain in Ethereum, other things you may want to do within an application, but either way you could program that.
All right, thank you.
One thing I forgot to mention, another thing blockchain will really help is reducing bureaucracy. So, for instance, when I graduated, I had to sign off a lot of services. I had to sign off my travel card. I had to sign off my scholarship I got for studying, and I had to get rid of my health grant. And there were a lot of these things I had to take care of once I graduated. And with the blockchain, you can also make a smart contract that automatically checks every now and then if you're graduated, yes or no, and then will just automatically shut down those services. So you can also get rid of a lot of bureaucracy.
Right.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Well, so maybe a little bit of a technical question, but this page looks like it's a production system, right? Is this the actual verification for
Yes.
MIT? So, but you're entering a test certificate. So in this certificate, is it embedded that it's a test certificate, and is it on the testnet blockchain, and is that what is verified?
That's right.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's. But so how do you make this distinction? Like, is there just a switch saying mainnet or testnet, or?
Yeah. So when the issuing institution is ready to actually write to the blockchain mainnet, there's a user interface drop-down menu where you just move from testnet to mainnet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also just wondering, you're using mainly the Bitcoin blockchain now, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think the fees on the Bitcoin blockchain are still relatively high. Did you also take that into account when going to the mainnet?
Yeah. So the mining fees fluctuate, obviously, and that's something that our user interface has occluded completely from the actual issuer. So they never have to deal with cryptocurrency. They don't need to know what the price is. We manage all of that for them behind the scenes. It's the potential fluctuation in price is built into the price of licensing the actual system.
What's actually your business model?
The business model, that's a great question. So it's free for recipients, free for verifiers. The only party that pays is the issuer.
Clear.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in your example, you sketched a situation where you said, well, it took me 5 months, or it took the institution 5 months to actually sign this paper version of my diploma or my certificate. I think that might still, even if you use this, might still be a problem, because it's also part of the process in the institution itself. The actual, there has to be an exam committee or something who actually verifies your certificate.
I don't think so, because actually eventually I was lucky because my professor was also on the exam board, so he provided me with a signature, and so I could work right away. But I had some friends who weren't that lucky, and they don't really need the paper certificate. It's just one of the things that's legally binding right now. And if you use a blockchain with this technology, with our application, you have actually a very fraudulent way of verifying that you pass all your degrees, and you can actually make sure that there's an automatically update that you get like a virtual badge that you really own a master's degree, and I think that is good enough to make legally binding. So what I think there will be a smart contract, and you will apply for all these courses on the blockchain. And once you've passed for all these courses, the smart contract will recognize you've passed all the right conditions, and real time it will tell you have a master degree, and you no longer have to wait months before you have a paper version in your hand. So it will only be ceremonial.
But it takes kind of a culture shift in these organizations.
Yeah, but that's
Until
always
it's that
that's
this
always
far.
the case with
Yeah.
blockchain. If you really want to have the maximum value of it, there needs to be a culture change. There needs to be a change in processes. Otherwise, there is not that much of added value, I think.
Maybe I can go.
You're quite right about that, because I think one of the benefits of blockchain is you have a new way of thinking. It's reinventing government, like Rutger von Zuidam just stated. I couldn't agree more. You have to come from a situation where you have 15 governments, 15 agencies, to become one execution agency for the benefit of the citizen. That is our ambition, I think. And your experience, I know, because all the processes, including that of DUO, the execution agency of education, is very traditional. It's based on paper. Let's face it, it's based on paper, but with internet. So blockchain could give us a huge boost to rethink government, and that's a challenging issue.
That's right. So, to give you a sense for the level of interest in Malta, they're in the process right now of articulating a national blockchain strategy. And the Prime Minister has been quite adamant that they want to set an example rather than follow. And so this learning machine pilot is kind of the first implementation of that. And they're seeing it as, very much a citizen-centered infrastructure. So their Institute for Technology, or their Malta Technology Authority, has been leading the way in a lot of e-government applications, which they see themselves transitioning seamlessly to the blockchain in coming years. So, everything from identifications to, traffic fines, birth and death certificates, all of that can go on the blockchain. It's no problem.
Okay, Colby.
Yes. So I'm coming from a blockchain perspective, not an education perspective. And today, the whole day, we've been talking about a very innovative topic, about blockchain. But I have not really heard any discussions about innovation in education and where education is going to go. And the role of universities in the future, which will obviously be changing with what Alan mentioned as well, MOOCs and all those things, and licenses of certificates from Udemy and Coursera being as valuable as 5 credits in strategic business management. And of course this will differ per faculty, and biology, where you do experiments, will be still very valid because universities have big research labs, etc. And maybe this also is a bit pointed as well to Alan as to you, Natalie. How do you see this combination of the future of education, what you in blockchain are focused on now, and this new technology?
That's a great question. And so I kind of wear 2 hats at Learning Machine. On the one hand, I lead business development, but I'm also a cultural anthropologist. And so I've written quite extensively about the very questions that you've just raised, about the future of the university, about the difference between skills standardization and technology standardization, which are 2 separate issues. The university is no doubt in a period of rapid change. My anticipation, not sure as much about Europe, but in the United States over the next few decades, we're likely to see a lot of smaller colleges and universities close down. That doesn't mean, though, that the university is going to go away. It's going to find itself serving a new purpose in a redefined economy. So right now, part of the confusion around the role of the university has to do with its kind of ambiguous relationship to future employment. So sometimes you hear people talking about the role of the university as essentially guaranteeing a certain type of income, salary, level of social capital, position in society. Well, that's not really the case increasingly, particularly, interestingly enough, as higher education has gotten more democratized. It begins to signify less, begins to be more of a class-based rite of passage, or simply a social expectation rather than really an index of skill. So we've seen a proliferation of skills-based assessments to kind of begin to bridge that gap. But whether those skills certification programs are seen on the same level as a university education is still very much up for grabs in different social contexts. So what's being negotiated is, everything from the meaning of knowledge to the meaning of skill to career trajectory to things like class and social capital and prestige. So even in the United States, it's not merely a university education that indexes a certain social position, but which university you go to is extremely important. And getting in is often even more important than graduating. So we're seeing all of these things radically in flux. What the blockchain allows for, though, is a seamless transfer of skill and credentialing across geographic boundaries and technology infrastructure boundaries. So one of the trends that no doubt is poised to continue is the global mobility of the workforce and of the student body. Despite the upheavals and the kind of efforts to be more isolationist on the part of a lot of countries, that I see actually as kind of a reaction to an inexorable trend that's much more powerful. So what the blockchain allows for is a type of seamlessly global future in a way that's never been imagined before, which also has its dangers and dark sides. I think Andrea was referring to this in the earlier session, where it can also become the underpinnings of a surveillance regime that is unprecedented in human history, where you have people, circulating in an elaborately documented supply chain. And this is why architecting from the principle of self-sovereign identity is so important. And it has to happen now, because 5 years from now, it'll be too late.
Don't want to hit the shim.
I don't have a great deal to add to what Natalie's just said. I think I agree with a lot of it. I'm not sure it will be as revolutionary as all of that. I think there are new possibilities with blockchains. I think they have the opportunity to make us more efficient in certain ways and to make certain things more flexible. But I think ultimately the value of the university comes in a lot of ways from not how it certifies you, but in actually how you go about learning, and that these forms of face-to-face, larger scale education are just going to be useful because there are only so many ways you can get new ideas across to people in effective ways. And it's important to remember that we talk about certification and recognition and accreditation and so on, but you actually have to take stuff in, something like that. These are just endpoints for a process which is actually just simply learning stuff, and that process is not to do with how you end up communicating those things, which I think is what blockchains offer us. I think teaching methods will adapt and change to digital environments, but I don't think it's tied to how we represent the outcomes of it, or even some of the aspects of the processes of it. I think things are going to be there's going to be less upheaval than it sounds like. I think there's the potential for more, and I showed a kind of particularly dramatic scenario of the Uber type thing. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm open to be proved wrong. Next one.
I was wondering, we're talking all about these big institutions and all these universities. But what about a car mechanic? Will his next employer go and validate on a website? I think most of those jobs will just continue. And what if I'm not interested in having a job, but I want to be a shop owner? I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't need anyone to take me in. I don't need anyone to say, hey, I need your approval to start anything. So what's your point of view on that?
Right. So credentialing is generally seen as a value add to some type of educational commitment. So let's take MOOCs, for example. And many of them you can take completely for free. What you pay for is the credential that says you took it and says you passed it. Chances are you're only going to pay for that credential if you think it'll have some value for you later on, unless you just want it for personal good feelings. So in the examples you mentioned, a car mechanic or an entrepreneur, I mean, you may not need any type of certification for those roles in society. Some entrepreneurs feel the need to get an MBA or some other certification of entrepreneurship mastery, but most of them don't. Car mechanics, you may be able to evaluate their skills simply by watching them do something and deciding whether or not you hire them on the basis of a manual interview. So credentialing is not a panacea, and it will not become some type of prison house that imprisons the labor force.
So other than awareness of blockchain technology, what do you imagine would be one of the bigger hurdles for mass adoption of this concept?
One of the, I think, main psychological hurdles has to do with thinking long term, so being forward thinking rather than reactive. And the Syrian refugee crisis is a case in point. So there are a lot of initiatives out there right now to certify the skills of refugees, the identities of refugees, but they're coming in the wake of the crisis. The true solution to the problem is preventative. It requires institutions in all parts of the world to begin issuing credentials in a format that is standards-based, that is learner-owned or recipient-owned, that is independently verifiable, and easily portable. That level of commitment requires an ability to imagine a future that is different from the present. So right now, because this all appears new and it appears to be a whole bunch of extra stuff that a lot of people haven't thought of yet, there's a kind of sense of why. That, I think, is going to change very quickly over the next few years. And so, a lot of what one would articulate as an obstacle today is something that the momentum will simply push through over time. The other thing is that right now this is enterprise level software. So large organizations tend to take a lot of time to make decisions, to commit budgets. So again, the question of time is really crucial.
So earlier you alluded to the standardization of skills versus the standardization of technology. Can you comment on the standardization of skills? And because I think a lot of the time we try to use a blockchain to accommodate some sort of institutional or otherwise problem that is not applicable for solving technology, and I sort of feel that we're falling into this trap here, saying, oh, we'll fix everything using a blockchain, but the underlying problem is largely the standardization of skills.
Yeah.
How do you see this?
Yeah, and there are separate organizational bodies that have formed to address that issue. So within the EU, the EU government has taken a real initiative in this area with the qualifications framework. In the United States, it's not really coming from the government, it's coming more from nonprofit organizations that deal primarily with higher education and continuing education. So there's a new thing called the Credential Registry in the US, which is a series of metadata skills definitions that have been open sourced for any vendor or developer to use. And the idea is to create basically a searchable national registry of skills. So if I'm an employer, I can draw a certain radius around, say, the metro area that I live in and say, I'm looking for people who have this particular skill, and it'll show me who, in fact, has those credentials. This is something, that level of metadata specificity is something that we're actually seriously considering building into the issuing platform, so that American institutions can simply, select these categories and be issuing that metadata along with all of their certificates. In the European Union, it would be the EQF framework and other equivalencies that are established on an international transfer of knowledge basis.
Thank you.
Just another detail. I was thinking you mentioned the migration from the contents of the certificate hosted by the institutions themselves to IPFS.
Mm-hmm.
In Open Badge, they just give you a ping image with baked in metadata, which you keep yourself.
Yeah.
You just need a computer that doesn't crash. That's also a way to be in charge of your own certificates without IPFS or something like that. Or
that's exactly right. So, and that's currently supported by the standard. So version 2.0 of BlockCerts is fully compatible with version 2.0 of the Open Badges standard. BlockCerts is actually an extension of OBI, so you can easily move between platforms, and also, BlockCerts are sent directly to the recipient. A copy of the actual cert is sent directly to the recipient and is also hosted by the issuer. So it's really in two places. The issuer has a version and the recipient has a version. All right, that seems like it might be a good place to wrap up. So I'll be around, so if anyone wants to talk one-on-one afterwards, I'd be happy to. Thank you.